So in this video we're going to look at how we can add in a leaderboard that stores points and will also display it. It will update the points of every player that is in there, and then we're going to look at how we can create items that when we connect with them, the same as we did with our ones that killed the player, we'll run a script that gives us points depending on which player has touched it. So it uses very similar kind of logical thought processes to the way it worked before. Let's do the leaderboard first because this is slightly more complicated. What we need to look at into our Explorer, I'm just going to minimize these items. Inside our Explorer, we have something in here called a server script service. Now, the server script service is something that is initiated when you press play within Roblox, and this is then applicable to all connected users and players. So our script has to go inside here because the leaderboard not only needs to be visible for all players, it needs to update for all players, and therefore when you as a player collect the points, that needs to be sent out to everything. So when you are playing Roblox on your computer, that's what's called a client. You are playing and connecting to a server. All of the individual players are clients connecting, and we need the data to go from our client to the server and then back out to all the other connected clients so that everyone can see what's happening when we play. So if we click on server script service and click the plus, we can then create a script. They're exactly the same kind of syntax and typing, but it just exists within this specific space so that it's visible. All right, let's delete all of this. I'm going to leave myself a comment to remind myself that this is the leaderboard that loads when the game starts. Okay, right then. Bear with me as we go through all of this code. We need, again, something very similar. We need, rather than touched, we need the event listener that says when a player is connected. So when a new player is added, we add them to the leaderboard so they appear, and it would set their score to 0 so that we are ready to go. There's a few bit of specific information that we're going to need to use. So let's start by getting all the players that are currently playing. So remember here I said in the Explorer players is empty, but when we start to play, that gets populated with the names. So let's get that service that does that. So let's say local players, or let's say all players. Local all players is equal to game colon, we'll do get service. Get service, and the service that we want is the players. So that's going to give us the service. Roblox runs a bunch of these kind of services behind that manage. Remember I said it runs things that deal with, has the character died? Well, let's trigger the death animation, let's respawn them. These are the services that exist in the background that Roblox runs on, and we can get at them, listen to them, manipulate them, etc., things like that. So what we want is that when a new player is added, when a new player begins, we'll run this function that will add them to the leaderboard. So same as we did before, we want to say all players dot, let's do player added. So this is what happens when a new player is added, and we're going to connect this to our function. Let's call this player joined, for example. So now we are connecting this function that we're going to make called player joined to the service of when every time a new player is added. All right then, let's make this function player joined. And I'm going to need to add my left and right brackets. I'm going to need to make sure that we pass in a player object. There we go, and our end has appeared. So here's our little function that we're going to write now. Let's move this around. Excellent. We've got our listener, which takes all players, and all players is a game service. Whereas in our other script, we took the object that it was parented to. We want the function that is going to look inside this players and tell me every time someone joins, it's going to add the player's name into that list. And I want to then run this little function every time somebody joins. All right. So what are we going to need to do? Now, there's some very specific code to use leaderboards. It's inbuilt into Roblox, and they do have a help file that tells you how to do this. I'm just going to tell you the code that we need to do that, and feel free to investigate further on the Roblox developer webpage, where they have a list of all of these functions and things. We're going to make a local, and we have to call it leader stats, and we're going to say that this is an instance new, and it's a folder. Oh, capital F, folder. There is a specific folder inside our players that store our the leaderboard stats. So we need to reference this specifically. Leader stats dot name is equal to leader stats. This is the exact way in which it's spelt in Roblox. Leader stats dot parent is the player. Very important, because this means create a leaderboard object, add us to it with the specific player that has been connected. So when I join, I'm going to get added, my name is going to appear there in the leaderboard stats, but also if my stats update, it will be saved locally and projected back out again via the player's service. Right, at the moment that would just create a blank leaderboard with no values. We need to now have a variable that's going to hold our score, our points, whatever we wish to call it. Let's call it points for now. So we're going to need to have local points is equal to an instance dot new, and what we want is a whole number, and a whole number is an int value, short for integer. So floating point number is a decimal number, and an integer is a whole number. So we're going to make a whole number. We want our points to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't want them to be 1.679. That's not what we need. So a whole number. Local points is an instance new. Now we're going to give it a name. Points dot capital points dot name. And this is going to be stored. Sorry, capital N. Points dot name is equal to, and we'll make it say points. So this is what will be written, and what the identifier is when we save it. We'll obviously start it with a value of 0, so that we start with no points. And now we want this points to be parented to our leaderboard stats. Very important. So these 4 lines are how we add into our leaderboard. So we could also have another set of stats on the leaderboard. We could have, objects found, and that could also be a stat that appears. Whenever we want to add something, this is how we now add multiple bits into our leaderboard. So let's make some comments so that we remember this. Add a value to save and display on the leaderboard. So those of us who are feeling confident could potentially copy and paste and add in some other further values. That's what's most important with our stats. Let's file save this and see how we're doing. I'm just going to save and update. I'm going to come back. We don't see anything in the editor, but let's press play. And there we have it. So now we can see that there's the players service, there will be the list of everybody joining, and the points, which was the stats variable, and a value of 0. Just to be super sure that this has been created, let's take a look in the Explorer Players. Let's open up, there I am, and there is the leader stats folder that was created and being stored along with the points value, and there it is. Fantastic. So now we know that we can create a leaderboard. It's done by the scripting service, so every player will see it, and also it will update for every player that's there. Great. What we want to add into our world now then is pickups that are going to give us points. Perhaps if we're going to do this obby challenge, perhaps if we manage to make it over, we'll connect and look at that, skills. Oof. And yeah, we can add that in. So let's take a look about how we're going to make an object that when we touch the object, instead of it killing us, so let's make an object that when we connect, instead of dying, what's actually going to happen is that we're going to increase our points. And also the object is going to disappear from the game because we've collected it. Let's think about how we're going to do that then. It's going to be very similar to our kill player script, perhaps a little bit more, but we're going to need to put a script onto our object that we want as our pickup. We're going to need to set up the connect event listener that's then going to run a function, gets which particular player has touched it, this is very important, and then give that player the points. We need to ensure that that happens, otherwise it could just give points to any player or all players. So that's what we want to do. Very, very similar kind of functionality. Let's come back in to design then. I'm just going to add in a part. It's a block. I think what I might do is just move it behind for now. I'm going to pop it down on the ground. I'm just going to change its colour and its style. I don't think I want it to be neon. Maybe I'll make it metal. That'll do for now. And I'll make it that colour. Maybe metal. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, so here's my pickup. Not amazing from a design perspective, but will do the job. Might just scale it a little bit so it's quite obvious. Okay, and of course if we wanted to make it look like a pickup, we could of course put the glowing sparkles on so it looks more interesting. In fact, why don't we do that? Let's go over into our model. Let's add some effects. Let's add a specific particle emitter like that. I mean, that's going to go off in forever, so let's change some of the settings within our particles. Let's change the lifetime rate to be between 1 and 3, and we'll change our rate down to something like 10. 10 will do. There we go. So that's the number of particles being emitted, and then their lifetime is how many seconds before they disappear. So that looks a little bit better, otherwise we would have them flying all off into the sky. Actually, there's a few interesting things you can play around with here. I'll let you take a look inside this at some point, but we can change the way in which they come out, rotate. They don't have to come out in that particular order, but there we go. That looks to me more like that should be something I should be collecting. Great. I'm going to rename this part now to points pickup, just so it's really obvious that this is the part within my game that is going to be the pickup. And we're going to attach a new script to it, and then within that script we're going to check if it's been touched, get the player that's touched it, get their stats and points, and then increase it by 1. Okay, let's go. So we'll click on the points pickup, click the plus, and let's add a script. Okay, new script. Okay, so this will add points to the player who collects. Right then, as per usual, we will make a local variable pickup, and it will be the script.parent, the object that this script is attached to. In this case, the points pickup object. Great. And we also then need to do our pickup dot touched, and we'll fire off the connect of this, and let's call this pickup touched. Great stuff. Now we need to make this function. Local function, spell it correctly, pickup touched, and we'll get the other, which will be who has touched it. So very, very similar to the way in which kill player other got what was touching it. We're going to use this very, very similarly as well. In fact, I'm just going to rename this script as points script to differentiate. Fantastic. Right then, what do we need to have happen when we touch it? We actually need to get the specific player. So how do we get that? Well, we're going to need to use that service again. So let's take a look back. This bit here where we can do the get game service players, that's what we're going to need. So let's also pop this outside of our function, and let's do local all players is equal to game get service players. Fantastic. So inside this function then, we want to get the player that has actually touching the object, the points pickup object. So this is a long line of code, so bear with me. So we'll do local player, a variable called player, and it's equal to, so it's all players, because we've got to check if all players are touching it, because maybe 2 people will touch it at the same time, and if so, this code may run and give both players a point, so it's interesting. We want to do get the player from the character that's touching. So let's do this. It's quite a long one. Get player from character. There it is. Get player from character. Get player from character. And what do we want? It is the other dot parent. Ooh, okay. Let's try to explain that a little bit here. Look through all the players and get the specific player that is attached, the specific player, like the ID of who it is that's attached to the actual walking Roblox character that's collided with the actual object. Okay. Once we do that, we can then say if player, then we'll do a get points and pass in the actual player. This is detecting which specific player has collided with the object. So now we need to make this get points function. Local get points. and we're going to be passing in the player. Local function. Okay, and what needs to happen in here? Well, we need to get that specific player's leader stats and their points, and then increase their points. So let's do another local variable to get the local player. The local player stats is equal to player weight. Now this is something new. Weight for child leader stats. In other words, remember when I showed you that it created the leader stats folder, and then within that is the points. So it's a subfolder. So it's remember we used the terminology the parent, and then these are the children that are attached to that. So this is going to look for that specific folder that is attached to that player. Then we can say local, let's do local player points is equal to, well, it's going to be the value that's also in there as well. So player points is equal to the player stats, so this variable here, and now we want the child under that, because remember with the that was how the hierarchy was. I can show you this again in just a second. And we're looking for points. We've got to make sure we spell it the same way. Okay, so now we've actually got to that specific value that's being stored in that folder. Now what do we want to do? Well, we want to increase those points. So player points is equal to player points plus 1. And so in here we could decide how many points we want to add to the player when they collect that pickup. Now this code will run when we collide into this object, which is going to continually give us points again and again and again and again, because the game is running at, you know, maybe 60 frames a second. So what we also need to do is, the minute we've done these points, we need to delete this entire object out of the game. We need to get rid of this pickup, the object that this script is attached to. We need to get rid of. So what we're going to do is say pickup destroy, and that will remove it, which obviously then means if it's deleted from the game, the script can't continue to run because it no longer exists. So we should collide, get 1 point, then that object will be deleted, so we have picked it up, and then that will work just the once. Okay, a lot to get our heads around there, but let's play this and check whether this works. Before we do though, I'm just going to show you that hierarchy again. So here's my leaderboard with my points. Let's look under players, then we find the exact player, then we look under, there's a folder called leader stats, then underneath that there is another called points. So this is the weight for child. We're looking through the hierarchy. So there we go, that's been found. Now let's look around and let's just see if this is actually going to work when we connect. It's not actually working. I wonder what's going wrong. Now there's a couple of ways in which we can try to troubleshoot this. This is something I'm just showing you that could be super useful. If we're going to the view, we could open up the output, which will give us what's going on in the background from Roblox. And anything in red is an error, which is really interesting. So going forward now, as we start to do more advanced scripts, it could be useful to hold this. Let me just play the game again. Let me just run into this object and see what's going on. We can see the numbers here going up. So it's giving me the same error again and again. And what I can see here is it says there's a problem with my script because it says I'm attempting to perform arithmetic. Okay, this will help me now. This error message will help me, so it's pretty useful. I'm just going to close that. home and come back. Let's take a look at our script and see if we can figure out what might potentially be wrong. It said line 13 there was a problem because we were trying to do some arithmetic on the player points, and that is because what we've done is we've grabbed the player points, which is actually just the reference to the value. It's not the actual value being held within that. So a slight little thing here is if we say player points dot value is equal to player points dot value plus 1, now we can actually do the maths on the value that's being held within there. So that was useful, being able to see that error message. Alright, now hopefully, fingers crossed, now we're going to be able to make this work. Let's see. There we go. I collided, the object disappeared, and my point score went up to 1. Now all I have to do is put lots more of those in to help me go around and find something. And I'm dead and back to the beginning again. Amazing. Let's stop that. Come back into our script here, and everything that we needed has been done. We could add more points if we wanted to, so that actually you get 10 points for every pickup, and maybe we could make another entire version of this script that gives you minus points if you pick something up. So we could start to have a game where there are different objects, and some you pick up will take away points and some will give you a positive number of points. We could of course add in some code here where you get a random amount of points depending on what you pick up, which makes a fun game for everybody to try and run, be the first to get something, and kind of explore this island to see who can find everything and get the most points. So that could be something interesting to do as well. We just would need to make a different object. We could make a copy of this script, drop it on, and give ourselves a different point. Let's do that so that you can see what I mean by that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make another part. Here it is. Let's focus on where is it? Click focus. Oh, it's right the way down there. I don't want it there. So I'm going to add this part, and this one is going to give me a different number of points. Let me scale this up. And leave this one here like this. Okay, so I'm going to just rename this to points lose, for example. So this one's going to give me negative points. And sure, why not? Let's put some fire on it because we love all these effects. Let's add a little bit of fire. There we go. Tiny bit of fire coming off of this. And instead of making it white, let's make it that'll do. Okay, so this is now our points lose. Let's duplicate our points script. Then let's drop it and move it onto our points lose. And then I'm going to rename this one. This is I'm going to rename this one to negative points script, just so we can be very sure it's different to the other one. Yeah, whenever we're going to make differences, let's rename the code so that we don't get confused. I double click on this, and here's our negative points script. I'm just going to change this now, and this is going to be a -1. In fact, just so we can really demonstrate, let's take away 5 points. So the exact code is the same. We don't need to edit it, other than how many points do we want to have happened, and I've used a minus symbol here so it takes away. So now I should get 1 point for this, collecting this this black box, and I should get -5 for collecting the glowing yellow box. Let's run that and test that out. Of course, If you wanted to make a sneaky game, you could make them all look identical, and then people don't know, are we picking up something that's going to give us points or take away? Bit of a fun idea. Right, 1 point. Oh no, took away the 5, so I'm currently at -4 points. We can now duplicate these objects and scatter them around the world, and now we have objects that we can collect to give us points, and we can have objects that take away our points. And the first player to collect those will be the first to collect the points. So if we save file save to Roblox, and file publish to Roblox. This is where we can now go into Roblox and we can look at our game. We can share the link to the game to our friends, and more than one of us can join. We will see ourselves on the leaderboard, and we will now be able to go and collect these 2 items. So from here, you could start to populate the world with pickups and power-ups, and you've got hazards, and with these 3 scripts, you can now start to build a game. We have the kill player script, which can be attached to anything. That could be some kind of hazard object, which could be, you know, a large block or an obby. It could be, you know, a fake power-up. People think this is a power-up, but actually it kills them. You know, you can utilize that, and we have 2 scripts to give us points and take away points, and our main script that holds our leaderboard. So 4 bits of code that will allow us to start to think about making all manner of games. Along with our design and sculpting and building tools, we now have some of the basic blocks to get constructing and creating.